You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Angle here for TGI Sports Talk Sunday stream of consciousness. We are struggling to get through, but we're making some progress. I won't do Perth math, so Rick Sherlock doesn't call me out again. But I'm probably past the 50% mark, about 60%. Made great strides since Thursday, guys. Wednesday night, I was still struggling on the college sports huddle, but we made it through. Did a little guest spot with Tanner D on Let's Talk Sports on Thursday night. Enjoyed that with NCAA basketball. And we're making some progress. Finally, my Perth math says I'm at 60%, which is 10% better than yesterday. I think I figured out where my math flaw was, Rick, if you're with me today on Friday when I was saying I was at 50%, but that's 100% better because I was at 0. 100% better would have been 25%. I figured that out now. Guys, welcome everybody who's watching us. We're on Northeast Streaming Sports. We're simulcasting on Let's Talk Sports. Also, of course, on the TGI Sports Talk page, you can see us. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all the shows you can catch in any of those locations. Obviously, if you're watching me now, you don't need to know about that now. We got a lot to talk about today, though. We're going to get into a lot of college basketball news, coaching-wise. Obviously, the conference tournaments are winding down. We've already got a bunch of teams that are in. We'll look at some bracketology. We'll look into some Major League Baseball news, Yankee injuries piling up, an interesting 50th anniversary, which we'll touch on today, some WBC news, and some other news, maybe most improved. Maybe we'll get into the way too early power rankings. We'll talk some NFL, and in the NFL, and we'll get into this too, and we can start show off with it if we want, or we'll talk about it during we can talk about it now. The NFL lost two greats this week. Bud Grant, a longtime coach of the Minnesota Vikings, also coached, I want to say at least a decade or more. If Rick Sherlock's here, and he'll probably help me with that. How long are you coaching the CFL? 53 to 66. Won 4 Grey Cups. Went to 4 Super Bowls with the Vikings. Took them to 4 Super Bowls, I should say. Played when the weather was outside. The game was played outside in the weather in Minnesota, and you had to be hardy. Great coach, Hall of Famer. I believe only the 2 players that are in the CFL and the NFL Hall of Fame. I'm sorry. Well, I guess we can call him a player because he did play in Canada too, I think. Bud Grant, CFL, NFL Hall of Famer, and Warren Moon. And we'll talk more about Bud Grant as we go forward today. And Otis Taylor, his career wasn't that long. He's not in the Hall of Fame, but Otis Taylor, for a short period of time, 4 or 5 years, was one of the, if not the most exciting wide receiver in football with Kansas City, and that exciting offense with Len Dawson. Beat Bud Grant's Vikings in the Super Bowl 4. And Otis Taylor had a game-changing play in that game. So what do we got here? Your Perth has improved. Thank you, Rick. Good morning. Good to have you with us. And Rick is not probably. He's the biggest Minnesota fan I know. I guess Mike Villa, the former mayor of Amsterdam, might give him a run, but I would say Rick is a bigger fan, the biggest Minnesota fan I know. So my condolences on the loss of, the greatest coach your team has ever seen. 4 Super Bowl losses. Listen, teams get derided, right, for going to Super Bowls and losing. The Buffalo Bills and the Vikings, I guess, the chief among them. Bills going to 4 straight. That's not easy to do. It's not easy just to get there. So great job, great coach, and by all accounts, a better human being. Good morning, CA. Good to have you with us. Unfortunately, you've only got about 20 minutes. Sorry about that. Bud Grant, right? Great call there. Bud was just a classy individual and a great coach. Bud was a great athlete. Drafted in the NBA and the NFL. I did not see that. Interesting. Listen, he's done a lot, though, right? I mean, as a player, played with the Eagles in 51 and 52. Played with the Blue Bombers in Canada from 53 to 66. Coached the Blue Bombers from 57 to 66. As I said, he won 4 gold Grey Cups. Went to a bunch more. Comes to the Vikings and coached them twice. 63 to 83. I'm sorry. Is that right? 67 to 83. And then in 1985, I believe in 84, I believe he retired. Rick, you can straighten me out here if I'm wrong. I believe he retired after the 83 season. I'm going to say Les Steckel. I could be wrong. Les Steckel was a coach in 84, and it was a disaster, and they brought back Bud Grant before the nutty professor there, what was his name, took over after that. Longtime assistant to Bud Grant. Good morning, Alan. Still at work because of the time change. Do you get paid for that extra hour, or they say it didn't really happen? Interesting dilemma I hadn't thought about for you overnight, guys. I'd like some clarification on that. And by the way, we're back in daylight savings time. I'm so happy. My wife gets upset. We lose an hour of sleep, whatever. I'll get it. I'll catch up. I like that hour of sunshine back. And there's a great movement in this country to do away with the time change in the fall. Stay on daylight savings time all the time. And I think it's gaining great ground. There's 18 states that have initiated changing their specific laws. There's already Arizona and parts of Indiana, I know, and maybe a few other pockets that don't change. It gets confusing when some change and some don't, right? But if 18 states are going to make this law real, then the federal government will have no choice at some time but to capitulate and find out. Alan doesn't know if he'll get paid. Alan, if you were there an extra hour, regardless of whether that hour happened, you should get paid. Not your fault. You know, the government wants to live in a time travel machine, for crying out loud. Locked out for the coin toss his shirt sleeves at 30 degrees, minus 30 degrees against the Seahawks. Tough guy, Bud Grant, and had some great teams, right? Listen, if you can get, and I don't mean this to sound disparaging, I guess it will, but if you can get to a Super Bowl with Joe Kapp as your quarterback, again, longtime CFL quarterback, Bud Grant, I believe, brought him into Minnesota when he, I don't know if it was right away when he got there, but later on. Joe Kapp was by far from one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, and he got to the Super Bowl with him. So great job. Darker in the mornings, but sundown mooses. Yes, thank you, Drew. Good morning to you. Good job yesterday with your draft. Sorry I could make it in person, but you would not have wanted me there yet yesterday. And today we're making some progress. We're probably 10% better. I would say I'm to 60% today. So let's hope that doesn't go backwards, which has been the trend. But I think we're getting over the hump. And I'll take the Morgan. My wife and I had a discussion yesterday. You know, I don't drive to work anymore, usually, because, you know, we've been working from home for 3 years. But when I did go to the office, I much would rather drive to work in the dark at 6 a.m. than drive home in the dark. You know, that was just always my thing. What do you got here, CA? Bud's best team didn't make the Super Bowl. Blown out of bounds call before the Hail Mary cost him a Super Bowl. Fran's father his life, and Fran's father his life. I don't follow that last part, but that game you're talking about, I believe, was a Dallas game, right? Nate Wright gets beat by Drew Pearson. A lot of discussion on that play. I remember being a kid. I want to say it was in 74. Rick, you can help me there. Dallas, the NFL may have just instituted or just recently instituted the wild card, and Dallas was a wild card probably for the first time ever. Had to go to Minnesota, and Minnesota was winning the game when there was a Hail Mary on the last play. A lot of confusion. A lot of people think Drew Pearson pushed off on Nate Wright, and it should not have been a touchdown. I don't remember the blown out of bounds call before the Hail Mary, but I will certainly check it out. As when I hear these things from you guys, I like to do some YouTube research, and I can usually find the plays or situations that we're talking about. So, listen, Bud Grant had some great teams with Minnesota. They could not, that didn't get over the hump to the Super Bowl. I mean, they lost to some good teams in the Super Bowl, right? They lost to Kansas City, which was really a powerhouse in the AFL at that time. They lost to the Miami Dolphins, who were going to back-to-back Super Bowls. They lost to Pittsburgh, who was just ascending into the great team that they were becoming. You know, and people talk about the Dallas Baltimore game being a bad football game to watch. I just rewatched a lot of that. I don't remember the number. It was in New Orleans. The weather wasn't good. And that Pittsburgh, Minnesota game was just atrocious. And then they lost to the Raiders in 76. They kept running these teams, you know, that were, you know, super teams and just a little bit better. But this is a guy, I mean, he gets to Minnesota. He goes 3-8 his first year. He wins the Central the next 4 years. Actually, he wins it the next 10 out of 11 years. He wins the Central and wins, you know, he averages about 11 wins a year. His best team was probably that, I guess it was that 10-2 was 75. Maybe the playoff was in 76, but there was 75 season. They were 12-2. They lost to the Cowboys in that Hail Mary game that you're talking about there, CA. But some great teams that didn't get to the Super Bowl even. I mean, he had years where he was 12-2, 11-3, 12-2. No, they got to the Super Bowl that year. He got to the Super Bowl back-to-back years against the Dolphins and the Steelers. Could have gone 3 consecutive, except for that. You're right. I sat with Fran at a trade show, and he said that was his best team. You know, Fran Tarkenton is an interesting guy too. We've got some. It looks like the Tommy Kramer thing has fallen through, by the way, Rick. Because as I thought, Tommy's wants money. This is what he's seems to be all about. So Chuck Foreman, we will have an interview with later this week, and former Bulldog Matt Robinson will also have on as well. But Fran Tarkenton, I think he's a guy I'd like to get on. He's just, Fran Tarkenton was an interesting guy. After his career, he was involved in a lot of like sketchy business schemes. I'm not sure, how any of that fell out. Alan, speaking of 1975, Alan finally getting into the history of the NFL. I'm just kidding, Alan. He's very good with Dallas Cowboy history and NFL history. I talk a lot about young guys today, and I apologize, Drew, by the way. I should have, I wish I got your call yesterday because I did want to apologize. I started to get a little snotty in the beginning yesterday when we were discussing some of the rules, and I decided I should just shut up before I got myself in more trouble with the young guys. I don't even know if they picked up on my sarcasm and my surliness. Part of that was the fact I wasn't feeling well, and the other fact is the fact that they think the game is good today. I'm confused, but maybe I read it wrong too. So anyway, I apologize if any of that came through. I felt it, and I knew I needed to shut up. I would argue the best Minnesota team not to make the Super Bowl was the 98 team. I don't think that was the question, though, Alan. I agree. The 98 team that got beat by Atlanta, they only lost one game all year, I believe, before that. And Gary Anderson had not missed a field goal all year. But we're talking about Bud's teams, 75. I don't know. Was 75 his best team? I kind of think 73 was one of his best teams that lost to Miami. They just got run out of the game. Miami was really good those few years there. I mean, Greasy, I know in the 72 Super Bowl, when he threw the ball 7 times. Yeah, I've heard that as well. Rick, it's unfortunate. I like the guy, but, he's being a bit of a diva, and that's fine. We'll find other guys. Good morning, Kenny Gifford. Good to have you with us. The beauty of soon as things get missed, right? I started to really get a little, and I think other people were probably talking it, and my comments were getting missed, which is fine. Because after I made 2 or 3, I thought I should shut up. But we could talk about, we'll talk plenty about baseball and, what's wrong with it. We have talked about what's wrong with it, Drew. And I mean, we agree on a lot of it, most of it, I think. I mean, you didn't hear my comment. You didn't hear my comment about after I'm off topic a little bit, but this is a stream of consciousness show. So at one point, I don't know which one of the guys it was either Tim or Adam, I don't remember, said to me, and I had made a comment about, not singles hitters not getting rewarded if we did such and such. And, power hitters who did nothing but hit home runs and strike out were being rewarded too much. And the comment that I made, I really got just rang my bell was, the 3 true outcomes. And, that's the way the game is. Well, that's the way the game is. And it just set me off. And it probably got missed, but I said very sarcastically, well, then I vote we add exit velocity as a category. That's about the time I said, Keith, you got to shut up, you old bastard. These guys don't want to hear you. Oh, my gosh. Anyway, so we've been talking about Bud Grant. We'll continue to talk about this a little bit. If you guys like, Rick, I want to give you a chance to. I was even going to ask you if you wanted to come in. I'll send you a link, Rick, if you want to come in. You don't have to even put yourself on camera. If you want to talk about Bud Grant a little bit, I'd be happy to do that. I meant to mention it to you yesterday, and after the draft, I kind of went to sleep, so I didn't get there. So let's see. We can continue this conversation, or we can, let's see, what do you got here? Oh, we got some more. Ed White, like your post about Bud saving you a spot in Valhalla. Yeah, I did see that. I made a comment to, pretty much just Godspeed Bud Grant. Listen, it's funny because I had put Bud Grant on my list, Rick, for interviews. I got too many Viking guys. Viking guys are accommodating. It seems. But I just put Bud Grant, Carl Eller, a couple of those guys on my list to kind of reach out to. So Ed White's a great guy. You saw my Ed White interview. Ed White's suffering with some dementia and or Alzheimer's issues, but you could not tell when I did my interview with him. Very cognizant. And, I see posts and the posts he puts up, and maybe he's got some help, and maybe he does have his moments, but he has a lot of painting. His paintings are very, very interesting. And he was showing me some when I interviewed him, and he did his, and they were kind of moving because he did one that really kind of was, he said, it's a bit abstract, but it was depicting the violence in the NFL, and it was very interesting. So Ed White was a very, very interesting interview for me. CA, that wasn't Bud's team at night. No, that's what we were talking about. That was We Are Who We Think They Are. I thought they were, or whatever. Dennis Green. Bud would have settled for a field goal on 3 possessions and lead instead of Green's greed. It cost momentum in only a 1-possession game. CA, are you a Vikings fan? I mean, I remember that game. I don't remember that detail. So I did not pick up if you were a Viking fan, which is certainly fine, because we've got another one in Mr. Sherlock. So good stuff. What are you guys' thoughts? Any thoughts before I move on from this topic? And we can revisit it at some point. Otis Taylor also passed away this week, and Otis Taylor, again, on that Kansas City team that beat Minnesota, Bud Grant in Minnesota in 70. The Super Bowl IV, and really kind of solidified. I mean, Super Bowl III is always recognized as the turning point for the merger, right? The merger was well underway. The the Jets' victory certainly gave it energy, but what really solidified it was the Chiefs' dismantling of the. Sorry for the words, but it's the only word I can use because Minnesota really wasn't in this game. If you watch it, really solidified the AFL ability to compete. So, taking candy from a baby. Is that another Drew Green? Who's Drew Green? Is that another Dennis Greenism? We are who they thought they were is my favorite Dennis Green. And what was the other one? So-and-so's not walking through that door. Dennis Green is quite a character too. Anyway, Otis Taylor, for a 3, 4, 5 year stretch was one of the best wide receivers and a guy who helped change, I think, the way the NFL was played. There weren't a lot of guys like Otis Taylor, big, strong, fast wide receivers. I mean, you think about Don Maynard, the great player for the Jets, not this big strapping guy. Otis Taylor looked like a freaking linebacker. And he was a great player, not in the Hall of Fame. I saw a lot of posts after he passed that, it was a crime that he wasn't in the Hall of Fame. And I know the game's different, so it's hard to compare the eras. And I mean, my immediate reaction was, yes, he should be in the Hall of Fame. And I went back and I looked at his career, and it's hard to look at those numbers and say, yeah, he definitely belongs in the Hall of Fame. And I have an issue already with the NFL with too many guys that just don't seem to belong because they've got to have a quota they meet every single year. But he was a great player. Oh, yeah. Hank Stram was, by the way, first game, that Super Bowl IV was the first time, I believe, any coach was ever mic'd up. I could be wrong about that, but I know in a Super Bowl it was. And like taking candy from a baby. I remember that. And to keep matriculating that ball down the field, Leonard. Oh, gosh. Great stuff. Hank Stram was a really good coach. And, I think some of Hank Stram's greatness gets lost in his personality. I mean, look at that Super Bowl. You couldn't have more different personalities on the sidelines than Bud Grant and Hank Stram, right? So you could probably take Bud Grant, put a microphone on Bud Grant, and it would take you an entire career to get what you get out of Hank Stram in one game. So anyway, good stuff. And we can certainly circle back here, but we want to get into some other stuff here. Let me get into let's get into yesterday's March Madness. We'll go more in depth on Wednesday. The selection Sunday's today. Believe it, 6. I want to say 6:30. Might be 6 o'clock. Yesterday's results. Some interesting games yesterday. And some interesting finals coming up today still. Yesterday, Houston beats Cincinnati in the one of the semifinals in the I should just go by. I'm going to go by conference here. I'm going to go just down AB, whatever. So in the A10, VCU beats St. Louis 90-78, and Dayton beats Fordham. Fordham had a great year this year. I was rooting for them to win this tournament and get in the NCAA tournament, but a really good turnaround year for Fordham. It's Dayton against VCU today. VCU, I think, should get that large bid, even if they lose. We will see, because we talk about, and we'll look at bracketology in a second, these teams that win the regular season in these one bid leads, and they're dominant. VCU's had a really dominant year. We talked about Bradley and Drake. Bradley ought to be considered for an at-large bid. We got really good teams in the Mountain West. I don't need to see 7 and 11 teams out of their conference getting in the NCAA tournament. We'll talk more about that as we go forward. Let me do a couple of these leagues, and then we'll move on. I'm going to go quickly through them. The ACC, Duke beats Virginia. John Shire wraps up kind of a roller coaster season for Duke. Got off to a fairly strong start. Had a bad middle of the season. And they came back. They finished 4th in the conference during the regular season. They come back and they have a very impressive ACC tournament. Again, the ACC's down a little bit, but Duke winning this tournament is nothing to be sneezed at. In John Shire's first year replacing Coach K. Now, a few weeks ago, a month ago, they were on the verge. They were on the bubble. They're on the verge of not being in the tournament. Now, I would say Duke is probably going to be looking at a 3 seed. So great job out of them. Let's go to some of the other big conferences. Big 12, Texas rolls over Kansas 76-56. Kansas playing this tournament without Bill Self. Has undergone what has not been disclosed as an emergency medical situation. He is expected to be back for the start of the NCAA tournament. I still think Kansas is a number 1 seed. That remains to be seen what the committee will think going forward. The Big East, another team I think is deserving of a 1, might end up in 2. And the difference between 1 and 2s isn't that big a deal. Marquette rolls. I mean, he played a great game yesterday, just rolling over Xavier. And I'll remind you again, Marquette picked to finish 9th in the Big East. Shaka Smart, to me, might be the coach of the year in NCAA basketball. What else? Big Ten. We're going to be going to the This is the semifinals yesterday. Purdue rolls over Ohio State, who'd been on a good run. And speaking of good runs, Penn State holds on to beat Indiana. They had a pretty big lead in this game. Indiana came back to tie it, and then Penn State held on to win 77-73. Jalen Pickett, who was a star at Siena before he transferred out of there, 28 points and 8 rebounds in this game. Penn State will face Purdue today. I think Penn State has probably earned their spot in the tournament with this run. They were solidly on the bubble. I think they've earned their spot. Where else I want to go? Let's go to the SEC real quick. And we'll go through some of this other stuff. Alabama rolls over Missouri 72-61. Still the cloud following Brandon Miller around. Has another great game, 20 points, 12 rebounds. Texas A&M and Buzz Peterson, former Marquette coach, continues to roll 87-75 over Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt may have got themselves in the tournament. We'll see with their run. I think Missouri is likely in as well. And again, for reference, both these teams 11-7 in the SEC, not 8-10 like Mississippi State, who's on the bubble, not 7-11 like West Virginia, not 8-10 like Oklahoma State, who both got blown out during the Big 12 tournament. I know we got a couple comments here. I'll stop for a second. Hated to tell him he died. Laugh, wanted to punch him in the face. Hated to tell him he died. That laugh, I wanted to punch him in the face. What? I think I'm losing. Oh, yeah. Hank Stram and yes. Oh, that laugh was awful. It was like a giggle, right? The Big East was like watching a hockey game. Some great defense. Marquette played some great defense yesterday, I thought. And Xavier, of course, played into it, I thought as well, hoisting too many three-pointers as they were trying to get back in the game. But, you know, you watch these games. If you've watched these games this week, college basketball is so superior to the NBA. It's really sad. I mean, yes, there's still a lot of three-pointers, but they move the basketball. They play good defense. There's strategies involved in, you know, whether to play zone or whether to play man-to-man. And there's just a lot of great players. Just got a Facebook comment on Hank. Had to delete it. Oh, you got a warning for a comment on Hank. Share it here, Rick. I'd like to see it. I don't have to post it. Let me put it in the comments. Purdue's big man was dominant. Yes. The Purdue's back playing pretty well. Purdue had a late season swoon that had me a bit worried. They probably have locked up a number 1 seed themselves. We'll look at that in a second. Looking at some of the other. Let's look at the scoreboard from yesterday. I won't go through all the rest of the tournaments necessarily. Oops, that's Friday. Saturday. Division I. By the way, Colgate finishes a great season winning their tournament. Houston 69-48 over Cincinnati. I gave Cincinnati a puncher's chance here, and they didn't do very well. Houston's a really good team. They do lose one of their better players in Sasser yesterday with a groin injury. They're unsure if he's going to be able to play today against Memphis. Today, Memphis won yesterday big over Tulane. This is going to be a war with Houston and Memphis today. They had a great battle just last weekend, and Houston barely survived that. And with down one of their best players, it's going to be a little tough. Houston's the number one seed either way. Memphis has played their way into the tournament if they weren't already in, and played very well. We talked about Texas romping over Kansas. I still think Kansas will be a number one seed. Alabama wins today. They likely are a number one seed. They'll be playing Texas A&M, as I said, but this will not be an easy day for Nate Oates in Alabama. Purdue rolls over. We talked about Purdue. We talked about Marquette. We talked about Duke. Talked about all these games. Utah State gives San Diego State all they could handle, 62-57 out in the Mountain West Championship. San Diego State's had a great year. Probably going to be a 4 seed. Could sneak into a 3. We'll see how it hashes out. Utah State is definitely in, and I do think that league should get 4 bids. We'll see whether that happens. Problem is, if you get a bid stealer, some of these, rather than take the bid away from these lower tier power conference teams, they're liable to go to the better mid-major schools. Vermont punches their ticket with a 79-59 win over UMass Lowell. Yale will play against Princeton as they roll over Cornell, and Princeton beat Pennsylvania yesterday by 7. Howard wraps up the MEAC final, 65-64, and a nail-biter against Norfolk State. We talked about VCU playing against Dayton today. Grambling loses to Texas Southern. So it's a one-bid league, so it's not really stealing a bid. Grambling was one of the best teams in that conference. Texas Southern just 7-11 and 14-20 on the year. They earn a bid to the tournament with a victory in the SWAC final. Toledo gets beat by Kent State. I like Kent State here. Kent State's got a shot at winning a first-round game here, depending on who they match up with. 93-78. Iona, we got some news. We'll talk about some coaching news here in a second. Iona, and I'll talk about this one right away, 76-55 rolls over Marist. They're going to go in, be a live dog in the first round under Coach Rick Pitino. Rick Pitino, this will likely be his swan song with Iona. Rick Pitino's already tied to talks at St. John's, Georgetown, although Georgetown's also looking at the Penn State coach. But Pitino's tied to St. John's, Georgetown, and Texas Tech. I think Rick Pitino and St. John's are a match made in heaven. If anybody's going to revive that St. John's program, Mikey Anderson fired over the weekend. Good basketball coach. He brought in a lot of talent there. He was able to recruit very well. They used to win games. Elsewhere, Florida Atlantic does not let themselves, and this would have set up an interesting scenario too. If UAB had beaten Florida Atlantic, would have been interesting to see if Florida Atlantic still hold on for an at-large bid. I think they would have, but I don't think. I do think UAB ought to get a bid. 14-6 in Conference USA, 25-9. Not an awful basketball conference, guys. Again, I'd rather see UAB in there than one of these teams like Mississippi State, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and I'm sure there's a couple others I can think of. UC Santa Barbara beats Cal State Fullerton in the Big West Final, 72-62. And Grand Canyon returns to the big ass tournament. The big dance. 84-66 over Southern Utah. Oh, what do we got here? Sorry to say I don't follow college sports much, but I already missed Coach K and now Jim Boeheim. We're going to talk about that here in a second, Drew, for sure. I'll talk about some coaches right now. Jim Boeheim, and I talked about this on a college show, but I know a lot of you guys don't tune in on Wednesday nights. Jim Boeheim is a career. Coach K's already missed. John Shire did a really good job in his first year. We'll see whether he can have the type of consistency that Coach K had. Jim Boeheim, after 47 years, you're never going to see this again, guys. Never going to see guys spend 47 years at the school. Coach K was at Duke for 42 years. You're not going to see that anymore. You're not going to see guys coach 40 years in total. I mean, people talked about Jay Wright, being at Villanova for 47 years as head coach, 60 years affiliated with the school for Jim Boeheim, going back to his playing days, and a remarkable career. 1,100 victories, put Syracuse on the map. You think it was easy recruiting? Now it got easier when the Big East came into play, and it was a made-for-TV league, really, because basketball wasn't all over the airwaves at that time. But getting kids to come to Syracuse in the dead of winter to play basketball, great recruiter, great coach, polarizing figure. I understand. People think he should have won more. He was at Syracuse, guys. He wasn't at North Carolina. He wasn't at Kentucky. He wasn't at UCLA. 35 NCAA tournaments, 5 Final Fours for Syracuse. There's a lot of big name schools that have been to 5 Final Fours. Bigger name schools. 1 national championship. Great coach. He'll be missed for sure. Mike Anderson out, as I said. Some other chatter here. Patrick Ewing fired at Georgetown. Listen, rightfully so. He had a horrible record. They had to break a 27-game Big East losing streak this week. Just unable to get over the hump. They won the Big East tournament a couple years ago, which really saved his job. But as it was only a stay of execution. Patrick Ewing will be an assistant coach somewhere again, probably in the NBA. Mike Bray leaving Notre Dame, a bad year for Notre Dame this year. I think they were 11-21 maybe. Mike Bray leaving Notre Dame, but saying he may not be done coaching. Pastner from Georgia Tech had a good career at Memphis before that. Chris Beard got fired by Texas. Looks like he's going to be the Ole Miss head coach. So we turned a blind eye where it's warranted. I mean, I know the charges were dropped, but if we think nothing happened here, then we're nuts. Coach Terry, who took over on an interim basis at Texas, I don't know how he does not get the full-time gig here. All he did was lead this team to a tremendous top 10 season and a Big 12 championship in the tournament yesterday. Adams, the coach for Texas Tech, is out after making some very insensitive remarks, especially in today's day and age. I guess at another time it would not have been taken quite as direly, but he knew when he said it, he made a mistake. He apologized right away, and he was not able to survive. They're looking for a head coach. Coach Fox out at Cal, fired after just an atrocious year. Can't read my writing there. Oh, the Austin Peay coach fired Nate James, I think his name is, right? Carlos, if you're with me, they're looking for a coach. And I threw that out just for you. Let's look at some comments. Join me, Rick, and be in the posse. I still want to see this. I am feeling a little better, Billy. Thank you. Good to have you with us today. I'm about 60% now. I was about 50 yesterday, so I'm 10% better. I've learned to do this math. I'm 10% better than I was yesterday. My comment Friday, I kept saying, was I'm at 50%, which is 100% better than I was yesterday. But I kept saying I was at 0%. Or the day before, so that is actually would have been much larger than 100% better. 100% would have been if I was at 25%, which is probably accurate. But Rick pointed out the failure of the math Perth system, the math system at Perth once again. Good morning to the pulverizer. I don't really understand how losing. I don't get it either. You know, there's a lot of teams. Records matter, right? We put too much emphasis, and I understand if you're playing crappy teams and nothing but crappy teams, it's got to matter a little bit. But don't tell me teams with bad records, 6 games over 500 overall, under 500 in your conference, and I should put you in because your strength of schedule was 12th in the country. Well, you didn't win any of the games. And by the way, schools like Oral Roberts, I mean, they played Houston this year. They can't. You think they can get the Kentuckys to play them in 1-1s? And if they play them, they got to go to them every time. You think they'll play a 1-1? No. God, it ticks me off. Records matter. I'll talk a lot about this Wednesday night when we get into we have the selections show tonight. We'll talk about who gets lost. We'll see. You may use the term pushing their ticket if Facebook doesn't like words that I was worried about. So I can't say punching. Oh, so you talked about punching. You talked about punching Coach Stram in the face, basically what you put in there before. Facebook can bite me. You know what? I mean, Jesus Christ. I'm so tired of Facebook and the political freaking correctness police out there and this woke country that needs to go back to sleep. Jesus. I watched Chris Rock's special yesterday on Netflix. It was very funny. And Chris Rock, like him or hate him, I mean, again, some people aren't going to like what he does because he's a little raunchy during his stand-up, but he's very funny. And he talked a lot about, the political correctness, the things you can't say to offend people, and the wokeness nonsense that we're dealing with. And how Facebook bans me for a month. I could use a month off. But it's gotten so ridiculous. I'm afraid to say anything to anybody. And he talks a lot about selective wokeness. Our outrage is selective. He talks about how the incident with Will Smith was selective outrage on his part. Everybody else had been calling him out about all the crap going on in his marriage and his wife's being a predator, sleeping with one of her son's friends. It was all over the internet. It was all over everywhere. And everybody was calling out Will Smith as being a bitch. And he says, and who's he hit? He hits me. It was a very funny special. He talked about how R. Kelly and Michael Jackson, you still hear Michael Jackson's music on the radio. You don't hear R. Kelly's. They committed the same crime, and one has better music than the other. Selective outrage. Here today, gone tomorrow. Remember these coaches, but in a couple of years, it will be who they are. Who are they? Oh, who are they? No, I don't think so. Coach K, in some cases, yes. Some of the guys I mentioned, the Mikey Andersons of the world, yes. But Jim Boeheim, Coach K, these are guys their names are not going away. The Terry Adams of the world, the Pastners, the Chris Beards. There's another selective outrage, right? One school says he can't coach us because of what he did, which was atrocious, by the way, even though charges were dropped. But Ole Miss says it's okay. Whatever. Watson's already broadcast. Yes. Anyway, let me look at the bracketology real quick, and we'll move on to some Major League Baseball and get Drew more involved here. I'm going to go by Joe Lunardi. We'll see where he's got people today. Oh, let's see. His number one overall seed, which I disagree with, is Kansas. I still think the number one overall seed is Houston. His number one seeds are, and I'll also tell you who's scheduled to play in Albany next week. Kansas, Alabama, Houston and Purdue. I think if Purdue slips up today, or Houston's got a number one seed locked up. I think if Alabama or Purdue slip up today, I'm moving Marquette to the 1 line. I know they're a 2 seed now, but I'd move Marquette up to the 1 line. And again, I just don't think there's that big a difference in 1 and 2 seeds. Joe Lunardi's on the bubble. Last 4 buys, so they don't have to play in the first 4. Boise State, I agree with this. Providence, Utah State should be in. Rutgers, all right. Last 4 in, Mississippi State, no freaking way. If Mississippi State's in and Nevada's out, or Vanderbilt's out, or even North Carolina's out, I don't get it. Oregon's out. Winning record in the Pac-12, went to the semifinal. Mississippi State. Last 4 in, Mississippi State, Pittsburgh, NC State, Arizona State. I probably only got a problem with 1 of these. Because the first 4 out, Oklahoma State should be out. My biggest problem is West Virginia's not even here. West Virginia's in the tournament. So I got 2 problems. I got at least 2 problems. West Virginia and Mississippi State. And I think Nevada and either Vanderbilt or Clemson, good regular season in the ACC, didn't play well in the tournament. Oral Roberts, and also Oral Roberts is a 12. How is Oral Roberts a 12? Four losses this year, not one bad loss among them, and they rolled over the rest of their schedule. All losses on the road to Utah State, a good team, Houston, a good team. Can I click on them here? Let me give you your losses. At St. Mary's, a really good team up in the West Coast Conference. Houston on the road, only the number 1 team in the country. Utah State going to the Final Four, or going to the big dance. And at New Mexico, another non-league game on the road, a good team that's not making the dance, but not a bad loss on the road. Richard Pitino did a good job turning that program around this year. Kenny, can't say anything because people have gone so sensitive. I would know bullying. I agree. Bullying's bad and a part of life. There's more bullying done on Facebook that people get away with. Some people I consider friends bully people like crazy. Yeah, what you do with a bully is you punch him in the face. I agree. Sort of like the big bully Alabama and win. You know, I'm just tired of it. It gets so, you know, I'm either going to say whatever I want to say and let let things fall where they fall. Thank God we're not in the office for the last 3 years. Oh, man. I got to look up what people want to be called as pronouns. I have no problem with anybody. I have no problem with same-sex relationships or even marriage. I have no problem with people who want to be identified as a freaking mashed potato if that's what they want to identify as. But don't make it my problem, because if I call you he or she because that's what you look like, I'm the bad guy. So I call everybody by their name. Anyway, I'm sorry. This isn't a political show, and I'm sorry. But I just get tired. As of today, and we'll see what happens tonight with the Selection Sunday. It's the last time we'll talk about projections. Here's who's projected for Albany next Friday. 4 games. Still thinking about going. The prices are not good, though. Number 5, Indiana against Oral Roberts, Kenny, in Albany. Xavier, number 4, against Iona. Number 13. That's a live upset right there. Rick Pitino If that's a matchup, I'm all over the Gales. That's two of the games. The other two games would be Creighton, a 6 seed against either Mississippi State or Pittsburgh. Mississippi State, give me a break. And Kansas State, a 3 seed against Furman, a 14. Those would be the matchups in Albany next Friday and then Sunday with the winners. I'm 63 in a couple of months. Once I'm retired, I'll say whatever I want and I'll get away with it. Believe me. And I'll just say things to be outrageous, man. I just want to be able to have a conversation and not have my mind going, what can I say to this person? Because I don't get offended by anything, guys. I'm offended by people that are offended by everything. Do I get passionate and angry about things? Sure. But offended? No. Do what you want. Just don't involve me. You know? Anyway, what else we got? What else did I miss in college basketball here? There was a couple other things I want to talk about. We talked about Shire's Blue Devils winning. He said it was a surreal feeling to win this tournament in his first season replacing Coach K. Great job. I think John Shire's done a great job and should be commended. Arizona, I didn't mention, I don't think, wrapped up the Pac-12 with a win against UCLA. UCLA probably going to get hurt in the seedings because of losing their best defensive player, whose name's escaping me for the moment. It's going to teams. The committee looks at momentum, how teams are playing at the time, and injuries, which I don't know if they should take that into effect or not. If I earned a number 1 seed with my total resume, that's what should matter. Or 4 seed or 12 seed or whatever. Mick Cronin had to rush off from the press conference after this UCLA-Arizona game because he'd heard his father was in a bit of an altercation, I think more of a screaming match with a Arizona fan, his 81 or 82-year-old father. Fans, shut up. Stop yelling at people in the stands, an 81-year-old man. Yell at the kids, fine. But, keep your racial epithets and your nasty personal comments out of it. God. Bill Self is doing well, according to all reports, after an emergency medical procedure, which goes unnamed, earlier in the week that sidelined him for the entire tournament. The team was coached by Norm Roberts, a former St. John's coach himself, Norm Roberts. And he coached them to a second place finish in the tournament. But Bill Self should be back and probably will have a 1 seed that they start. Number 1 team, Houston, does face some adversity. As I said, they lost one of their best players in Sasser to a groin injury. His status for today and going forward is unknown. For those of you who've had groin injuries, not a lot of fun. And also Kelvin Sampson, head coach Kelvin Sampson's twin sister, died on Friday morning. So he's having to play under those, or coach under those circumstances as well. And that's never an easy thing to deal with. I'm sure losing and again, I have not lost any of my siblings, but as losing a sibling, I'm sure is difficult. Losing a twin, I'm sure is doubly difficult. What do we got here for comments? Okay, I spilled my water all over the place. Yep, we'll be cleaning that up later. Kenny Gifford, what are the prices? I can't get clarification. I saw $160, but it used to be when you bought, I don't know. I can remember the last time I went to the first and second rounds, it was like $90, and you got all 6 games. You got the 4 games on Friday, the 2 games on Sunday. But I can't get clarification whether the $160 I'm paying is just for Friday's session, or it's for 1 game, So I'm going to look into it a little more today and find out. As of today, he's moved UConn out of the Albany. This isn't a done deal. Tonight, during the selection show, you'll see whether they are. We were looking forward to seeing UConn in Albany and Andre Jackson from Amsterdam, who's played really well late in the season, especially, and he played well in the tournament, coming to Albany. AP is looking for a coach. As we said, he wanted Coach Tibbs to put in his resume, I heard, for that job. You're betting Self had a stent put in his heart? Possibly. And again, that's something where I guess you can come back in a week or two. So he'll be back. We talked about Texas. I don't think I have anything else on the NCAA I want to get into. Wichita State did fire their coach, Isaac Brown. I don't think I mentioned that. Matt Bradley, as we said, led San Diego State. Well, one of the biggest questions, who gets the final number one seed? Alabama, Kansas, and Houston are locks. I think if Purdue wins, they get it. I think if Purdue loses, I think it could be Marquette. Texas, though, could be in that conversation as well. Number one overall seed, I still think is Houston. They think it's Kansas. Which team is saying the biggest gift basket to Sonny May? Oh, God. There were 5 potential bid thieves on Saturday. We talked about bid thieves. Somebody who could steal a bid away from somebody else because they weren't, going to get in that large bid. They'd have to win the tournament. Now, one bid leagues don't come into this. Ohio State lost. Cincinnati lost. Vanderbilt lost, but I think they're still in. Lenardi's got them out. I think they're still in. Tulane lost to Memphis badly. And finally, UAB lost to FAU. 2 of these teams that they're calling bid stealers, I think should be in a tournament anyway. I think UAB should be in, and I think Vanderbilt should be in. So now the problem is with like Vanderbilt or Ohio State, they're liable to steal a bid from their own league, or hurt the Mountain West who want to get 4 bids, and they'll probably get 3 because somebody stole a bid. Really, no big bid stealers left though. I mean, Memphis is going to be in. Who's the games being played today? That's what I didn't look at. Games being played today. There aren't many. And they got to get them in before the selection show. So who's we got? We got Princeton and Yale. No bid stealing there. Texas A&M, Alabama. No bid stealing there. Maybe Dayton's a bid stealer if they beat VCU. But I think both these teams get in. Memphis and Houston, no. Penn State's in. Penn State's in without winning this tournament. They are in. NBA had another wrestling match Tuesday night. Too much smack talk. Well, listen, let's just hope they don't start bringing their guns to the games and leaving them in their uniform. We all know the John Morant story. It's sad. Why are these kids bringing guns on planes and taking them from city to city? Ridiculous. Let's move on. Let's talk some Major League Baseball. What's going on in Major League Baseball, Drew? Feel free to bring up whatever topic you want to talk about here. WBC, the USA won yesterday, by the way, 2-1. Where's my let's look at the scoreboard from yesterday. The USA sneaks by. Where's that's March 12th. Where's just go to scores. Yesterday, Italy beats the Netherlands. Netherlands now, I believe, is going to be out. Good story. They won their first 2 games. I'm not sure. It's still. I think it was a winner get done. We'll see how it works out in pool. They're still in pool play, and we'll get into that in a little bit. That game's today. It's bottom of 7, Italy. Sorry about that. Japan, they wrapped up Perfect pool. They're into the quarterfinals. Japan won 10-2 over. Boy, how the heck am I supposed to know who that is? All I have is the flag. Oh, there it is. Czech Republic. Sorry. It's kind of a surprise entry into this league or this tournament. In a fun game, Venezuela and the Dominican. That pool is loaded, by the way. Wins 5-1. The USA wins 6-2 over Great Britain after having an early deficit. Great Britain, a bit of a surprise in this tournament. Chinese Taipei beat the Netherlands, which made this win probably a must-win for the Netherlands today. They're losing to Italy 6-1, as I said. Puerto Rico rolls over Nicaragua 9-1. Puerto Rico, Dominican, and Venezuela all in the same pool. Korea loses to the Czech Republic, wins over the Czech Republic 7-3. Mexico in an upset loses in the ninth inning of this game 5-4 to Colombia, and Chinese Taipei loses to Cuba 7-1. In the pool play right now, where's the pool play? Damn it! No, I lost it. Hold on. Oh, let's look at the. Well, I could look at the today's games. Today's games, as I said, Netherlands are playing right now, losing to Italy 6-1. United States will play Mexico. That game is at 10 o'clock tonight. God damn. Israel will play Nicaragua. Australia will play the Czech Republic. Great Britain plays Canada. Japan plays Australia. I'm sorry, Japan already beat Australia today. And Puerto Rico and Venezuela. Probably the game of the day. United States and Mexico, Venezuela and Puerto Rico would be the games of the day in my mind. And as we back up and look at the pool standings, if I can get that far, because I can't find another way to it. There we go. Pool A, the Netherlands is 2-1, Chinese Taipei 2-2, Cuba 2-2, Panama 2-2, Italy 1-2. Now the thing is, two of these teams get out of these pools. If all these teams finish 2-2, there's a tiebreaker. I got to believe Italy's in because they beat the Netherlands. Actually, I would think the Netherlands would be in because they beat Cuba, they beat Panama. So I'm not sure how the tiebreakers will work. Japan's already moved on; they're a perfect 4-0, and Australia's 2-1. I think the only team with a chance to catch them would be Korea. And pools C and D have just started play. Colombia and USA 1-0 in Pool C. Canada hasn't played yet, playing their first game today. Britain and Mexico have lost a game with no wins. And in the loaded Pool D, Puerto Rico and Venezuela 1-0. Israel yet to play. They'll play today against Canada. Dominican and Nicaragua are now one loss and no wins. The Dominican would be the odds-on favorite for me in that Pool D. What do we got here? Let me get to your comments. Extensions for Carroll. Yeah, Carroll signs what? A 8-year deal. Is that what I saw this morning, Drew? Carroll and D-backs agree to an 8-year, $111 million deal. Now, my issue here is going to be, and Carroll's going to be a really good player. Where are the opt-outs? It's only a 9th-year club option added to it for $134 million, making the contract if they pick it up. Where are the player outs? Because I love that they lock up this young talent at club-friendly prices, but then if they give them out when this thing's obsolete, players can't have it both ways. They can't have the security of a long-term deal, 8 years, $111 million in this case, maybe 9 for $134. That's the club's option. And also have opt-outs every 2 years because your contract's now obsolete. So anyway, Anthony Price, welcome this morning. I see why people wanted a pitch clock. Yesterday's games was long. You're talking about the WBC games were kind of long. I agree, but I don't think the pitch clock is the way to do it. Games are shorter this spring training. I think they've been shortened by nearly, I want to say 20 minutes. I saw, maybe it's longer. But there's rules. Here's my problem. There's rules in the books to address these things. We don't need to put pitch clocks in. Just enforce the rules that are there. You already saw Matt Scherzer manipulating the pitch clock rule. If you noticed the other day, I don't remember who they were playing, but the batter stepped out, took his one time out. I'm sorry, he didn't take his one time out. What was it? He got in the box. I guess. What the hell was it? Now I don't remember. Drew, you might remember this. Anyway, he found a way to manipulate it to his advantage where he could freeze the hitter. He called timeout. That's what it was. He got the hitter to call timeout, and he stood there set the whole time he was not in the box. Scherzer stood there ready to pitch, and then as soon as the guy got back in the box, he quick pitched him, basically. You also saw the pitch clock kind of play into Harrison Bader's injury. As he felt rushed, and he got an oblique injury. He's going to keep him out 6 weeks now. So the thing is, look, is it going to shorten games? Yes. Is it going to cause other issues? Yes. Are there going to be games that can decide on the pitch clock? Yes. Kenny, don't forget to mention the South Carolina girls team, 32-0 in NCAA play. They'll be the prohibitive favorite going into the women's tournament. We'll try to dive a little bit more into the women on Wednesday. Try to remind me. The NBA is not on its way out only because there's so much money. Until TV stops paying money to televise the games, there's going to be plenty of money to keep the league afloat. Guys, that was an hour and 8 minutes into the show. First time I hit the cough button. That's a good sign. So I don't know who wants to watch. The NBA is getting to be a hard watch again. There's times I watch the Knicks and I love it. It's good basketball, and there's other times it's just unwatchable. Rick thanks Drew for the fantasy help. Drew had to make double duty. Another big snowstorm. Keep baseball inside. No, don't keep baseball inside. I hate indoor stadiums. I hate indoor stadiums in baseball. I hate indoor stadiums in football. It's not where the games are meant to be played. Play in the elements. And the elements are such that you can't play, you don't play. I'm reading a great book right now called Game 6. It's actually the complete story of Game 6 of the 1975 World Series between the Red Sox and the Reds. Great game, maybe the best game, in my opinion, is certainly in my lifetime, the best World Series game ever played. And Carlton Fisk hits, if you don't know the story, Red Sox are winning early in the game. It's a very great back and forth game. Reds take momentum, go ahead. Bernie Carbo hits an unexpected 3-run home run after having one of the worst swings in the history of Major League Baseball to barely foul a pitch off in 2 strikes. They go into extra innings, all kinds of excitement. Denny Doyle throwing out on a short fly ball to left field. Carlton Fisk, to make a long story short, it's a game-winning, and I won't call it walk-off because at the time we didn't use the term, game-winning home run in the 12th inning to send the game to Game 7. This was after the games were delayed for days because of rain. That's what prompted the story. I believe the game was supposed to be played on Saturday. I don't know, maybe Friday. I feel like the games were delayed 5 days between games 5 and 6. So anyway, it's funny. The book goes pitch by pitch, but in between pitches, they tell stories about the players that are involved in that matchup right now, backstories, going back through their careers. It's a really interesting book, and it's well written, and it's an easy read, man. Flying through it. And we are getting a big snowstorm. You're right. 1 to 2 feet here, it looks like, Monday into Tuesday. So stay safe, people. What else? So listen, the USA and the WBC, listen, their offense is really, really good. The worry is pitchers. they got a lot of relief pitchers, and the starting pitching may not be strong enough. The worry is to get through. They'll get through pool play. It shouldn't be a problem, but it may be a problem once they get to the quarters or the semis. We'll see. Tatis ends his slump. He is playing. He can't play. He's suspended, I think. I don't know how many games he's got left. Drew, you can probably fill me in on that. I can probably look at the article. How many games does he have left here? He isn't eligible to return until April 20th. I thought it was later, and when he comes back, he'll play right field. But he got his first 2 hits of the spring yesterday. Cardinals rookie Jordan Walker, one of the sensations of spring training, got hurt yesterday with a strained right shoulder, sliding into second base against the Astros in the first inning. We talked about Carroll. Jesus Alou, speaking of passing, so another quick rest in peace and Godspeed to Jesus Alou. Mostly a pinch hitter galore through his career, played with the Giants, played with the A's, played with the Astros, played with a bunch of other teams, was part of the only outfield in baseball history to sport 3 brothers at one time when he was with the Giants. He played with his brother Felipe, who was a really, really good player. Another great book I read recently was his autobiography, Felipe Alou, and their brother Matty, all played in the same outfield for the Giants in the early 60s. What else do we want to talk about here in Major League Baseball? Oh, hold on. Yeah, here's the injuries so far. Bader, Rondon. Rondon we knew would get hurt. I said, don't sign Carlos Rondon, and what do? They signed Carlos Rondon. This is not hindsight on my part. I've been saying it since the day they signed him. Bad move. Guy was hurt nearly his entire career with the White Sox, or underperforming, one or the other. Had 2 good years with the Giants. I'm not saying they're flukes, but this was a risky signing, and they should not have made it. Montas, who's been hurt since the day he got here. Trevino, who's an important cog in the bullpen. Tommy Kahnle, local product here from Shaker, second time around with the Yankees, already hurt. Guerrero hurt. Senga hurt. This is for the Mets now. Senga, Quintana, Haniger for the Haniger and Cobb, I believe, for the Giants. Musgrave for San Diego. Alvarez, I'm not sure which Alvarez we're talking about there. DeGrom, of course, hurt for Texas. Jordan Walker, we just talked about. Justin Turner hit in the face. That was a nasty, I don't know that he got any of the helmet. I thought he got hit flush in the face. We'll see when he comes back and how that will hurt him. Buxton for Minnesota, always hurt. Polanco hurt for them as well. Miranda, Andrew Painter, Bautista. Injuries just galore in baseball, which, again, I talked about this a little bit on the Mac and Jack and Jim show this morning with Mac, Jack, and Jim Jeffcoat. And the training and it's in all sports, they don't train the right way. They train upper body. They don't train the lower body. They don't train, or they overtrain certain parts of their body. We didn't have oblique injuries when I was a kid. Stop lifting weights and do baseball drills that get you in shape for baseball activities. So freaking annoying, man. Anthony Price, off topic. Am I going into the XFL? Not unless I have to. Oh, God. I know there's some good coaches coaching there. We'll talk about it a little bit. I don't even know when they start, but maybe we'll take a look at it next week, Anthony. There's just so much other stuff going on in sports. It's hard for me to get into offshoot football leagues that aren't going to last. They're not going to last. Who's behind this endeavor? This is the Rock's endeavor, isn't it, Anthony? Good question. I mean, maybe there'll be some good football. I don't know. I can't get into the new USFL. I tried. Maybe it's the fact that they play in one place. This year they're going to play in more stadiums, but it's just no fun. Dr. Paul coming out with a book shortly. Yes, Dr. Paul Simendinger, who does a show on Saturdays on Northeast Streaming Sports, and also participates in the debate show with Mac and Jack on Saturdays. He has a new book coming out on Roy White shortly. I read a great book not that long ago about Roy White. Trying to think of the title of it now. Can't think of the title. It's really, really well written by Phil. Can't remember Phil's last name either right now. Had him on as a guest on my show. Lives out on Long Island. Roy White, one of the most underrated players in Yankee history. Never big numbers, never a flashy player, but Roy White was involved with a lot of winning teams. And Roy White was part of a team that gets a bad rap. You know, the Horace Clarke years get a bad rap. Yankees didn't have horrible teams those years. I mean, a couple of years they did. But they had some good teams, but they were playing in the division with the Orioles running away with it every single year. And speaking of the Yankees, I'll get into them. I'll get into this in a second. A 50-year anniversary of a interesting event. Carlos Ruiz, 8-year contract with Minnesota. Yeah. That might be a little long. Oh, the Alvarez for Houston. Okay. A lot of injuries. Again, it's that time of year, but the pitching injuries to me, and again, I'll bet you won't go ask Nolan Ryan, or if you could ask Tom Seaver if he was still with us, they don't pitch enough. Pitchers don't pitch enough. Their arm strength doesn't get better. And then when they're asked to tax themselves a little bit and they don't pitch enough innings, they don't do the drills to strengthen their arms the way they used to. And again, they don't throw enough. They don't throw enough between starts. They don't throw enough during games. So when they're asked to tax themselves a little bit, we get all kinds of injuries. Ethan Salas, a 16-year-old prospect, makes his spring debut with the Padres. I did not hear that, Anthony. I don't think he's going to be making the team. Where's he from? He's got to be from the Caribbean somewhere, right? Don't know a lot about him. Drew might. Drew drives into some of these more obscure prospects more than I do, unless they're on my team. But I don't really know a lot about Ethan Santos. Is that what it was? Oh, Salas. Sorry. Ethan Salas. But I'm sure we'll hear something about him. Let me look him up real quick, just for the hell of it. Let's see what we can find about him. Ethan Salas makes Cactus League debut at 16 years old. He learned he would be catching the back half of the Cactus League tilt against the White Sox. Quite a responsibility for a 16-year-old backstop. He's ranked by MLB Pipeline as the top prospect in this year's international signing class. It has drawn rave reviews for his work all spring. All right. Somebody to keep an eye on here. And listen, if I was still in my Dynasty rotisserie auction league, he might be a guy I put in my farm system. I was in Drew's draft yesterday, which is, a head-to-head league, but I spent 30 years in a auction league where you drafted 40-man rosters every year, and you would sign guys to contracts, right? Literally, you sign guys to, you had a budget, right? You had to stay within your budget, but you could sign guys for 5 years for $5 or whatever, as long as you stayed within your budget. Guys in your farm system didn't count against your budget. So, you would keep 4, 5, 6 guys sometimes, and they would kind of progress through the system, and you'd have to make a move on them eventually. You couldn't just sit on them forever, but it was interesting. When you're doing your division leaders in baseball, Drew and I are going to talk about that. Drew, I'm going to say, I think we did a Tuesday night last time. Either a Monday or a Tuesday night we'll do, Drew, if you can. And I'm thinking maybe the last week of the month we'll try to do this. Drew, if you can, get yourself a cheap headset. Don't need to go out and buy your microphone and all that. But I think if you plug a headset, with a microphone into your computer, or you won't have that. I don't think you'll have the sound problems we had recently. So, yeah, we had them all. So, let me tell you something. Your draft went along pretty well last year. These drafts would be 5 or 6 hours, 7 hours. And you could keep players, you could keep so many players. You could keep your whole team if you wanted to from the year before, assuming their contract hadn't expired, right? Again, you could only keep guys for as long as you signed them for. It was a lot of fun, but it was a ton of work. I mean, a daily head-to-head is work. And there was a lot of work involved in this. You only made weekly moves, but when you're, keeping track of a 40-man roster year in and year out, and you're playing for a lot of money, it was tough. And I didn't like some of the new guys they brought in the league. For 30 years, for 25 years, we had basically the same 12 teams. One change, I think, in 25 years. That's remarkable. And then we started having some new guys come in, and it wasn't a lot of fun. Breaking news, there was a lot of arguing. Every trade would get freaking chastised, and I just couldn't deal with these guys anymore. My opinion was, running that my team there, I could, if I decided to run it into the ground, that's my choice. Just like Major League Baseball, teams are mismanaged. Teams are going to mismanage, Roto League teams too. Bad trades are part of the game. Breaking news: the Yankees signed an 80-year-old pitcher and have never had such a knuckleball. Was Phil Niekro alive? Oh God, they're going to need an 80-year-old knuckleballer the way things are going. Man, let's look quick at the what time is it? It's 53. We got some early. ESPN has their early power rankings out. You can post anything else you want to talk about too, Drew, or anybody else. We'll talk about anything you want, and we'll go on to the NFL here in a little bit. Right now, and I don't disagree with this, the number one ranked team in baseball right now is the Houston Astros. And I think until the Houston Astros are knocked off their perch, they're the best team in baseball. They did lose Justin Verlander, I realize, but their only other major loss, I think, was Yuri Gurriel, who was really done. He's going to be a starter, I think, with the Marlins this year, but he was pretty much done. Little strange signing them bringing in Abreu. It's not a really Houston thing to do, but I think this is still the team to beat, and I think it's the model organization right now in baseball. And it's hard to root against Dusty Baker. No, I'm rooting for the Yankees to beat them finally. True. Wilbur Wood would be a good candidate for the position Kenny just said the Yankees should petition the league for. Houston's pen is sick. Their starters aren't anything to shake a stick at either. They've got a solid lineup. They don't necessarily play the three ultimate outcomes. What's the phrase, Drew? It's slipping my mind because I hate it. They don't necessarily play home run, walk, or strikeout baseball. They do put the ball in play. The Braves, they've got number 2. I guess I won't disagree with this. I think they've improved themselves. I think picking up Sean Murphy was a good move for them. They did have to give up William Contreras to do it, who had a good season for them last year, I think mostly DHing. But Murphy's an upgrade over Travis Denard. And I think Vaughn Grissom is going to be a decent replacement for Dansby Swanson. Maybe not year one. He might struggle a bit, but I think he'll be good enough. And they've also got Orlando Arcia to be able to fill in there as well. Thank you. 3 true outcomes. Hate it. Bulls pen Braves bullpen very solid. Absolutely. And their starters, again, nothing to shake at in their everyday lineup. Will miss Dansby Swanson, but I think they'll be able to overcome that. Rodgers is signing with the Washington Defenders. Man, I hope that's not true. Actually, I hope it is true. I think that'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be just awesome? My God. Number 3. I don't know if I agree with this. Not right now. Yankees are at number 3. Yankees have got the injuries to worry about now, and I don't think they've improved left field or third base enough, at least based on what the plan is to start the season with Hicks and Donaldson. I don't think their biggest weakness is facing elite pitching in the postseason. And I think they need guys who can put the ball in play. And I really, on the upside, I think the infusion of youth with the Yankees, whether Velope wins the shortstop position out of spring training, or they send him out to save him on service time or whatever they decide to do, I'd keep him. He's playing too well. Maybe you can move Peraza to third base. Maybe you can move Peraza to second base and trade Torres for a third baseman or a left fielder. Probably a left fielder, because if I decide Peraza and Velope can be the second shortstop combination going forward, and all signs point to the fact that could be the case, then I can move DJ to third base. But pitching worries, I said early on, people were talking about this great rotation the Yankees had, and I kept saying Rendon's a question mark. Whether he's got the makeup to pitch here was one question I had. Whether his health will hold out, as it has the last 2 years. Severino's always, a candidate to go down. So, this team still has some work to do. Saw that Rangers are going. Listen, I think the Rangers. I would probably put the Blue Jays in this spot at 3. And the Blue Jays are all in. You're right. And I really believe if the Blue Jays don't win this year, they're going to break it up. And they better not slide early, because their manager, Schneider, right? After the implosion in the playoffs last year, they get off to a bad start with this team this year. You know who's sitting to his left or his right, wherever the bench coach sits in Toronto? One Donnie Baseball. Be very interesting to see him in Toronto managing that team. It's a distinct possibility. 4, the Mets. Mets already with some injury issues as well. But I think they did a really smart thing in bringing in Verlander, not signing DeGrom to the long-term contract they would have had to, that the Rangers did. I mean, with the money that they would have spent on DeGrom, they were able to bring in Verlander, and they were able to bring in Narvaez. They're also able to bring in the kid from Japan, who's hurt a little bit right now, but his name's escaping me. I think the Mets bullpen is still good. Diaz, I know that pitchers can be relief pitchers, especially closers, can be problematic year to year. But Edwin Diaz had one of the best seasons in baseball last year, and I think the Mets deserve this ranking. The Padres, I still have my issues about the Padres. I know they committed $280 million to Xander Bogaerts. Great shortstop. Leading that Netherlands team, by the way. And they got Tatis coming back. But, putting teams of superstars together. Now you're going to have Bogaerts, Tatis, Manny, Soto, who they've got to sign still. Now they got some good pieces. Kim is a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. You got Jake Cronenworth, who's going to play first base but can play other positions. I'm sorry. Kim is going to play second base this year, I believe. But when you get guys like Bogaerts and Machado and Soto and Tatis, now Tatis signed one of those long-term contracts we just talked about earlier. How long before he says I'm underpaid? Once Soto signs and they've already committed $280 million to Bogarts? Manny's already talking about, if we don't win, I'm out of here. I want out. I don't know. This is my issue, Drew, because you can roll out superstars. The Yankees did this for years in the 80s when they didn't win. Other teams have tried to do it, and it has not been successful. Marlins were successful one year, and they broke it all up. If you remember when Jim Leland was the manager there, and they won the, I want to say can't remember what year it was. Probably the year the Yankees didn't win in the 90s, right? 98, maybe? No, not 98. Can't remember what year it was. 97, maybe. I guess it was 97 they beat the Indians in the World Series. They put together a superstar lineup, but they couldn't keep it together. Chemistry's the issue. They got a great manager to try to do that. We'll see. The Dodgers at 6, I don't know. I don't predict, the huge downfall that some people do, especially the Los Angeles hating Mark Mancini, predicting 70 wins for this team. But the lineup isn't quite as deep as it has been, I don't think. Trey Turner leaving. Cody Bellinger, as bad as he's been, leaving. You swapped Justin Turner for J.D. Martinez. Gavin Lux is out for the season. They've got some injuries in the pitching staff. The bullpen is a question mark to me. I'm not sure that this team is really going to be in a. I think they're still one of the better teams in baseball, and maybe top 10, but I don't think they're in the top 6. Why don't GM sign guys for $40 million for 1 year, better than $40 million for 10? Well, I'm not sure. First of all, you have a salary cap, so they don't want to, bust the boat. Although, Verlander's signed for $43 million for 2 years, a year for 2 years. I think it's pretty obvious. If I can get a guy for $40 million over 10, it's only $4 million a year. If I could get a guy to stay for that, then why wouldn't I lock him up? But again, that's a little simplistic, I think, and I don't think it's even, I don't even know if it's a good comparison. The Blue Jays at 7, I think that's too low for the Blue Jays. I think they're higher. I think they're probably the third on paper. We're only talking on paper. We haven't played a game. Third best team in baseball. Really good team. They got Brandon Belt they've added to this team. And Kevin Kiermaier they've added to this team. Dalton Varsho they've added to this team. To go with Guerrero and Bichette. Some interesting moves. This team, I think this team is, as Drew said, they're all in. And I think this is going to be speaking of Johnny, did he ghost us? Mark Mancini is not ghosted. As he keeps reaching out to me, we need to chat. He's busy with a lot of his other endeavors. Sunday morning's got tough for him when I moved the time up, I think. Plus, he's been doing covering a lot of events in LA. But we'll probably have Mark around. He produces a lot of shows. This guy produces about 30 shows a week. And hosts some of them too. Phillies at 8. I think the Phillies are in for a rude awakening this year. They're going to be without Bryce Harper till maybe the All-Star break. He's not going to play the field probably even then. I think the bullpen is certainly an issue. Robertson might be their best reliever. Craig Kimbrell could be good or could be just atrocious. Soto's wild. Their defense is not much better than it was last year. And I just think this team's going to struggle, and I hope not. Rob Thompson's a really good guy, and I really hope he does not fall apart. He wants to forget about the steak sandwiches. Tampa Bay, 9. I don't know. Tampa's going to have a little – well, they're going to have Wander Franco for the whole year, hopefully. That'll help them. Kevin Cash, although he's sometimes not one of my favorite guys because he's a little he's a little bit too, I don't know. I don't know how to I can't even say what the problem I have with Kevin Cash. He's a good manager, but I got a problem with Kevin Cash. He's a little chippy. Seattle Mariners 10. I think this ranking's too low for them. I would put Seattle ahead of Tampa Bay. I would put them ahead of the Phillies. I'd put them ahead of the Dodgers. At a minimum. Cardinals, who knows? I mean, the Cardinals always find a way to have a decent team. They got to find a way to replace Yadier Molina. They're replacing him with Wilson Contreras, formerly of the Cubs. Not a bad player, but he's not Yadier Molina. Goldschmidt and Arrieta are very good players on the corners of the infield, but they play a lot of kids in other places, guys who are scrappy players, but not a lot of superstars. Now, that doesn't mean they can't win. So we'll see how they fare here in the new year. Adam Wainwright, by the way, is back again at 41 years old. And John Flaherty, two major pieces of this rotation. I'd be a little worried about what's going on here. And Jordan Montgomery, you're going to find out, St. Louis fans, he's not this flash in the pan that you saw for 6 weeks last year when he first got there. He's more like the pitcher who finished up the season. Phillies' pen is still suspect despite all their efforts in the past decade. Agreed. As I said, I don't have a lot of faith in that Philly bullpen or maybe the back end of the rotation. Although picking up, Taijuan Walker will be good, but he'll get hurt. He'll pitch great the first half of the year. And the defense is suspect. The best thing they got going for them is Rob Thompson, who's a solid baseball man, solid manager. Cleveland, we haven't got to Cleveland yet. Cleveland's at 12. I would put Cleveland ahead of the Cardinals, and I would put Cleveland ahead of Tampa, and I put Cleveland ahead of the Phillies. It's a very young team with some good veterans like Ramirez. Jose Ramirez, one of the most underrated players in the game in my mind. So I think this team, and they did pick up Josh Bell, who will fill a need at first base and DH. So we'll see how that works out. But again, a lot of young kids, and I think this could be Terry Francona's swan song. I keep saying that, but I think he wants to get to a World Series with this team. And I think 12 is too low. Back to the Phillies. Trey Turner does count as a solid piece. I think the contract they signed him to is outrageous for Trey Turner, to be honest with you. But in the early going, that won't hurt them. It'll help their defense. I really don't know, Drew, whether he's playing shortstop or second base at the moment. But we'll find out. And again, I don't think the Phillies will be bad. I just don't see the Phillies making a run like they made last year. Milwaukee, 13. If there's a team that might bounce back this year, it might be Milwaukee. They really didn't improve their bats a lot. They did pick up Jesse Winkler, who just wasn't a good fit in Seattle, did have some good seasons in Cincinnati. They picked up William Contreras to catch in DH, had a very good year offensively for the Braves last year. This team still might need at least another bat, but their pitching is really, really good. Their bullpen might be better with Delvin Williams than it was with Josh Hader, depending on whether Hader was a player that arrived in San Diego or the player that pitched late in the year and pitched great, for years before that in Milwaukee. We'll see. I do think the Brewers may be a bounce back team. I do not think you'll see them picking them as a World Series contender, as they did last year. Shortstop for Trey Turner. Talk about relying on kids. The Brewers are all in on that, except for Yelich, of course. Yelich, they keep waiting for Yelich to turn back the clock. It's probably not going to happen. I like some of the kids that the Brewers are going with, and I like that pitching staff and that bullpen a lot. That's why I like them. The Twins, I don't know. They re-signed Correa. They do have injury issues, obviously, with Buxton, who's a great player when he's playing. But they've got other injury too. Royce Lewis and Alex Kirilloff, Medea, and Chris Paddock, I think, is out for the year, who they signed. So maybe this team will be good in 2 years. I don't know, but there's question marks all over the field on this team. And we'll dive deeper into this. The White Sox, I don't know what to expect of the White Sox out of the White Sox first year post Tony La Russa. I really thought they might break up the team a little bit more than they did. They did let Abreu walk, but they need comeback seasons from Giolito, who I'm counting on that from, Tim Anderson, Luis Robert, Juan Bacata, Grandel. If these players bounce back, that Central Division is wide open in the American League, and they could jump in. The Angels still don't know what they're doing. They still can't fix their pitching. Mike Trout will get hurt. Ohtani's a superstar. Anthony Rendon is if he gets healthy, maybe he's still the player that he was, but we'll see. I'm not really counting on them a lot. The Rangers at 17. Listen, I've talked a lot about the Rangers in the past, and I don't think the Rangers are ready to win. I think they splurged too early on Siemens and Seager, who didn't have great seasons last year. They were okay. This team had the worst on-base percentage of any team in baseball last year, I keep saying. Lowe had a decent year at first base. The catcher, the kid catcher's okay. But look at the rotation. They got DeGrom at the top of it, who, if they get 15 starts, they ought to count themselves lucky. And then who? A bunch of guys. Listen, I know Perez had a nice year last year, but he's 31 years old. I have no reason to think he's going to repeat that. God. The other guys on this team, the other pitchers, Nathan Eovaldi is number 2. Andrew Haney. How do guys get excited over Andrew Haney? How? What gives anybody – his ERA was good last year. This guy hasn't been a good pitcher his entire career for any stretch of time. And John Gray's, an innings eater, which is a wonderful thing unless you can't pitch. Their closer's Will Smith. No, Braves moved on from him. Adolis Garcia is a nice player. Again, batting average and on-base percentage is horrendous. I know they like Heim, the catcher. These guys need market improvement out of some of these guys if they think they're going to be anywhere near contending against the Astros and the Mariners. It's just not going to happen. And if they do, then God, who am I talking to? Oh, God. Ranger fans, I will. Alan Perales, mostly, I'll apologize if I'm wrong. You know that I'm very good at apologizing when I'm wrong. I don't know how much I can get excited about this team, though, Drew. Let's take a quick look. Take a quick look at the Angels. And again, Drew and I will dive into this much more in depth. We're not going to get to much NFL, and I really don't care. Let's look at their starting rotation, the Angels. Ohtani, we know is good. Tyler Anderson, Boy, I can't get excited about Sandoval. I can't get excited about Detmers. I can't get that excited about Suarez. We'll see. I mean, again, some unknown quantities here, some known quantities. I just can't get excited. I can't even get excited about the lineup. Brandon Drury had a good first half last year, bad second half. And then before that, he was barely in baseball for a couple of years. So, there's a lot of unknowns here. Hunter Renfroe and Ohtani are good offensive players. Obviously, Mike Trout, when he's healthy, is one of the best players in baseball. I just don't know if this team is ready to win. I didn't think you said they were exciting. There you go. They're better than they've been, but that's the bar is set very low there, right, Drew? What else we got? You know what I'm going to do from here? Well, I'm surprised the Orioles are ranked as low as they are, 18. They did sign a couple of veterans to one-year deals. Kyle Gibson, who might be their number one starter. Adam Frazier, who's had some good years, mostly with Pittsburgh, playing all over the place. Never really lived up to the hype once he got traded to San Diego and then later went to Seattle. We certainly like Rushman a lot. Probably going to be in a conversation for best catchers in baseball now. And they got Gunnar Henderson ready to be a contender for the Rookie of the Year. So there's some talent on this team, and I think it's better than 18. Red Sox at 19, I don't see it. I see the Red Sox as one of the worst teams in baseball. Arizona might be better than we think. There's a lot of talented young players. Corbin Carroll, Jake McCarthy, Perdomo, Marino. It's all going to depend on how they improve. You know, they signed a couple decent veteran pieces, and Lourdes Gurriel, Kyle Lewis, Evan Longoria. You know, can they contend? I don't think they're ready to contend, but they had some good streaks last year and showed that they can make improvement. The Cubs, I don't know what the Cubs are doing. 21 might be generous for this team. I mean, signing Dansby Swanson, good move. Playing some of the kids that they're going to play, like Nick Horner, will give them some solid defense and a little bit of offense. But you really think Eric Hosmer and Cody Bellinger are going to turn back the clock and be MVP candidates? Trey Mancini, great story. I don't see it happening. The Giants, I think, will be, maybe around 500. Again, are they going to be able to turn it on like they did 2 years ago when everything clicked? All of their platoons worked. All the reclamation projects and the pitching staff worked. No. When your best offensive players are Michael Conforto, who hasn't played in a year, 2 years almost, Mitch Haniger, nice power on Mitch Haniger, but not much else. This team's not going to contend in the West. The Marlins, did they improve? They had 93 losses last year, which is their best showing in like 6 years, 7 or 5 or 6 years. But that's progress. Is adding Segura and Cueto and God, the strikeout machine. Who's the strikeout machine there? The infielder, Suarez. Now, they could have a dominant rotation with Alcantara and, full seasons from Luzardo and Cabrera. Maybe a bounce back from Trevor Rogers. This could be a really good staff, but where are the runs going to come from? They did sign the or trade for the batting champion, but they traded one of their better pitchers for him. Pirates are the Pirates. I mean, their big signings this year were McCutchen and Santana. What are they doing? Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. Orioles' issues are youngsters who can be variable in some early injuries. Youngsters are always an issue. But listen, we talked about the catcher being one of the best catchers in baseball now. Henderson being a rookie-year contact. Cedric Mullins turned into a solid Major League Baseball player. They've got the makings of a solid team, and they learned how to win last year, which is very important. Remember, don't forget the bad start this team got off to. And they hung around the wild card race most of the year. Marlins keep hoping their pitching allows for but I have no problem building my team around a strong rotation and some good arms in a bullpen, but you've got to score some runs. How's this team score 4 runs a game? I just don't see how they do it. The Royals, another team, they bring in veterans. They re-signed Can't think who they re-signed. Oh, they signed Chapman. That's all you need to know. Jordan Lyles, they signed. Ryan Yarborough. You know, there's no reason to get excited here. You know, if this team gets to 500, it would be really good. 2 hole-in-ones at the Sawgrass this week. Nice. Who had them? Greinke, thank you. Jeez, I couldn't think of Greinke. I love Zach Greinke. Listen, Zach Greinke's probably going to be trade material. I think he wants to finish his career in Kansas City where he started, but he could be trade material by midseason. This team doesn't stack up very well on paper. Colorado, I didn't see where they've done anything to really improve what they've done last year. Chris Bryant, who they signed to a big contract last year, to a surprise of a lot of people. You know, he did contribute a decent production when he played, but he only played 42 games. And he's 31 years old now. Tigers, again, I'm not seeing where much of anything has improved there, and that's unfortunate. The Athletics, I think their most exciting thing the fans have to look for is where they're going to move to next year. Or not maybe next year, but in this very short term. They keep trading any good players they have. Montas is gone, and of course he's hurt. Elvis Andrus is now in Chicago. Or is he in Chicago or Kansas City? I don't remember. But a decent player, not the player that he was, but this guy could go 15-15 and have a decent batting average. You know, their big signings this year were utility guys, Diaz and Peterson. Washington, going to be bad for a while. Added some nice depth pieces like Dominic Smith, Corey Dickerson, who I like. I think Corey Dickerson's a good player who needs to play on a contending team to really be productive. You know, we'll see. I mean, they do have some young guys to build this team around, like C.J. Abrams and Ruiz and Garcia, guys they've acquired in trades over the last few years. Cincinnati, again, I don't see them much better than I saw them last year. And I thought they were the worst team in baseball last year. They got a very young rotation: Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and Graham Ashcraft. You're going to rely on kids in your top 3 spots in your rotation. You're just asking for trouble. They got some young infielders like Barraro and Dela Cruz, but they're not going to be any good. That's just my opinion. What do you got here? I see Cincinnati is way better than... I don't know. Well, they'll be better than Washington. And again, I don't think that's any great shakes if you're moving up from 30 to 28. Right? But yeah, I'm not going to argue the fact that they're better or worse, because to me, I'll lump all these 3 teams together. You know, I think the A's, I think the Rockies, I'll give the Royals a break. From 26 down, the Rockies, the Tigers, the A's, the Nationals, the Reds, none of them are going to be any good. And to say one is better than the other, if that's all the fans got to hang their hat on, man, it's going to be a long season in those cities. For sure. Andrus is playing second base for the Royals. That's what I thought. You know, he's a decent player. He'll give you some decent at-bats, some decent defense, and, you know, some veteran leadership. We'll see whether that works out or not. What else is going on in Major League Baseball we need to know about? What else is going on around the world of sports that we need to talk about? How about the NFL? We got 5 minutes left. I don't have much time. If we can go a few minutes over if we have to. Let's get into some odds and ends. Again, we want to, again, send our condolences to the families of Bud Grant, Otis Taylor, and I don't know what I'll talk about. I want to talk about the 50th anniversary. Let me put a banner. I know I don't have a banner for this, but we'll just put up odds and ends. This we just passed recently the 50th anniversary of one of the strangest trades in Major League Baseball history. And if you guys have other stuff you want to talk about, you can. But this is one that's always been near and dear to my heart. In the spring of 1973, the pitchers for the Yankees, Mike Kekich and Fritz Peterson, both left-handers, Fritz Peterson, a very underrated pitcher, just point up to his career. But they decided to swap families. They traded families. Not just wives. They didn't just trade their wives. That's how it started, right? They kind of thought, they were each with the wrong person and they should have been with the other guy's wife. So it started out as, a simple wife swap, and it became a life swap because they swapped wives, they swapped cars, they swapped houses, they swapped kids. And it was, in 1973, this was a pretty big scandal. And the Yankees weren't happy about it. Within the next year, they'd gotten rid of both of them, both traded to the Indians, and their careers were pretty much over. Peterson had one good year with the Indians and had some arm trouble, and then he kind of petered out. But this was a big story back in 1973, and a scandalous story at that time. And it didn't work out for Kekich and his new wife. They only lasted a few years and split up, and Kekich went on to have a bit of a tough life. But Peterson and his new wife stayed together and are still together today. So it worked out that one of these stories worked out. Fritz is now, unfortunately, in the throes of dementia or Alzheimer's. And I used to converse with Fritz, and I was going to have him as one of my interviews, but he progressed to the point where he wasn't able to do it. And he wrote a great book about the Horace Clarke years in New York. And if you get a chance, I would recommend reading it. But I thought it was kind of neat that this was the 50th anniversary of this story, which, again, maybe nobody else cares about, but I do. Buckley and Ra were the guys with the one holes in one. I'll start watching some golf now, Kenny, as we start getting in closer to the Masters. And these winter tournaments are just too hard for me to watch. And I don't like watching guys play 20 under par. Once the Masters gets here and we get into, actually, if I'm not mistaken, the TPC might be before that now. It might be coming up pretty soon. So anyway, Fritz Peterson, Mike Kekich kind of lost to the shadows of history. But Fritz Peterson was a really good pitcher. Pitched in the All-Star game a couple of times. I think he won an All-Star game. Was a really good left-hander. Won 20 games one year for the Yankees. Had some other good years. Him and Mel Stottlemyre were the stalwarts of that Yankee staff when I was a kid. And again, they had some teams that weren't bad, but they could not get past the Orioles ever. I mean, they won 93 games one year and finished 20 games out of first place. So anyway, probably a better story that I enjoyed than anybody else. So with that, if you guys don't have anything else, I'm going to start to wrap it up here. We had a good time this morning talking about everything going on in college basketball, the careers of the great Bud Grant and Otis Taylor, and the Major League Baseball stuff. Watch the WBC. I can't watch the USA tonight. 10 o'clock's just too late, man. So anyway, there'll be some other good baseball on. You got exhibition baseball, which again, I know I put down, but there's some reasons to watch it when you want to watch the kids, and you might win some jobs. So we'll see. That's the tournament Players Championship. Yeah, the Players Championship is now the first major of the year in professional golf. And the Masters will be up. I still think the Masters ought to be the first major, but that's just me. Don't matter. Have a great day, Drew. Have a good one yourself. Stay warm and safe during the blizzard. I will. 1 to 2 feet coming here, guys. If you're in the Northeast, stay safe. Stay off the roads. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk. We'll see you Wednesday with the Sunday. Whoa, there goes the music. Where'd it go? It's coming right back. I'll see you Wednesday with the College Sports Huddle, and we'll be back next week for the Sunday Stream of Consciousness and a bunch of stuff in between. See you later.